All right, everyone. Good afternoon. It looks like we are live streaming, so I think we're ready to get started with preliminaries in this round. First of all, Mr. Nolan, can I get you to mute yourself, please? All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Let me start off by introducing myself, as I believe at least one of the teams here knows. My name's David Taylor. I'm a county judge up in Gilpin County. Just for the record, I just confirmed with the tournament sponsors that it's not a conflict for me to hear the teams again, just because I'm not keeping score. We've got three other independent scorekeepers that weren't that didn't participate in the last round. So let me ask our scorekeepers first. Do any of you recognize any of the names on the participant lists here or feel that you have any kind of conflicts?
Before we do that, Mr. Nolan, I'm going to ask you if you could join us in courtroom 6. We're moving you to courtroom 6. Is that okay?
That's fine. I guess I'll just back out of here and go into courtroom 6.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so that leaves us with two scorekeepers. Do either of you recognize any of the names or think you have any conflicts?
I do not.
And Mr. Rain, I see you shaking your head as well. So I think we are good to get started. Let me go ahead and speak with a representative from each team. If you could just put your name on the record and we'll start that way. So I think I see Audra Snyder. Are you a representative for Team 9?
Your Honor, can you hear me?
I can.
Yes, I am a representative.
Okay, and do we have a representative from Team 8?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, starting with Team 8, just since you're the lower number, are you going to be the defense or the prosecution in this round?
We're going to be the defense in this round.
Okay, do you have all of your team members present?
Yes, we do.
You got a little garbled there, but I heard yes. So for Team 9, do you have all of your team members present?
Yes, Your Honor.
And are you prepared to start as well?
Yes. You're muted, Your Honor.
I know it's been happening on and off. I'm sorry. I apologize. So if I am unmuted, if I am muted, don't hesitate to speak up and just let me know that it's not a problem. Whoever needs to speak up, that'll be perfectly fine. I will do the same for all of you if we have connection difficulties or it looks like any of you are muted or we lose video or anything like that. So as I'm sure you're all aware from the prior round, we've been running into technical issues off and on. We've worked our way through them. I'll make sure everything's fair for everybody. So that's the best we can do under these circumstances. But for Team 9, you said you are prepared to proceed?
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
One name on there that I'm not certain about, Garrett McDonald as coach. I am aware of a Garrett, and I don't know if it's the same.
Well, let's see. Mr. McDonald, do you know Mr. Rain? If you're able to unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm terribly sorry. What was the question? I stepped aside to fix some tea while I was listening to the round. I'm sorry.
Do you know Mr. Rain, who's one of our scoring panelists?
Are you Jordan's dad?
Yeah, I thought you might be the same. So
then yes, we do know Mr.
can't,
Ryan. I'm sorry,
honest.
I did not see that.
Yeah. So I need to change rooms.
Okay. Why don't you hang out here for a second? I'll send an email and we'll get that. We'll get the switch made.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, let me hop out of, hang on. So what I'm being told is that given all of the logistical difficulties we're having, we're going to put any conflicts to the side unless you think it's so unfair that you can't be fair to either of the teams here. So Mr. Rain, what do you think?
I can certainly be impartial.
All right, that will do. Thank you very much. Let me make sure we've got our timekeepers prepared. So can the timekeepers hear me?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you ready to get started?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, I heard yes from both of you. Thank you. So why don't we go ahead and move into the preliminaries? So it looks like Team 9 is the prosecution in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and introduce all of yourselves and your witnesses as well?
My name is Audra Snyder. Today, I will be delivering the opening statement on behalf of the prosecution, conducting the cross-examination of Taylor Perkins, and conducting the direct examination of Kyle Kuzak.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Isabella Burgess, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Alex Cifuentes, as well as the cross-examination of Blake Van Owen.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Henry Falconetti, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Detective Jordan Markowitz, the cross-examination of Avery Becker, as well as delivering closing statements on behalf of the prosecution. At this time, may our witnesses introduce themselves?
By all means, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Spencer Wilcox, and today I am Alex Cifuentes.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Freya Naj, and today I am Kyle Kuzak.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Daniel Nakayama, and today I am Detective Jordan Markowitz.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Anna Sherman, and today I will be the timekeeper for the prosecution.
All right, thank you everyone from Team 9. Team 8, would you like to introduce all of yourselves?
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel and member of the jury. My name is Cooper Kern, and today I'll be conducting the direct examination of Professor Blake Van Owen, the cross-examination of Detective Jordan Markowitz, and the closing argument.
Hi, my name is Julia Spahalski, and I will be directing Avery Becker, and I will be crossing Kyle Kuzak.
And good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Braden Bogut, and I am directing Taylor Perkins, crossing Alex Cifuentes, and delivering the opening statement for the defense.
We now ask that our witnesses may introduce themselves.
Please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Timothy Phelan, and today I will be portraying Blake Van Owen.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Alicia Catton. I will be portraying Taylor Perkins.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. I'm Cody Burnett, and I will be portraying Avery Becker.
Okay, thank you all.
May I interrupt, Judge Taylor? Who's doing closing for the defense? I may have missed that.
I'm doing closing for the defense.
And that's Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Okay. And here's what I'll do. It's what we found in doing a couple rounds of this. I did a virtual mock trial about a month ago as well. What I'm going to do is ask each of you during your particular turn to give your real name, and that goes for witnesses as well. I think that'll help all of us keep track of who we're actually seeing on the screen a little bit better, because it gets a little bit difficult virtually, and I'm sure some of you have probably run into the same problem. But let me just make absolutely certain this is Team 9 as the prosecution versus Team 8 as the defense. Is that correct? Okay, I see you nodding your head. So Team 8, do you have, as prosecution, do you have any preliminary matters that you would like to address today?
Your Honor, Team 9 is prosecution, just to clarify, but yes, you have preliminary matters.
I knew I was going to do that, so I apologize. Team 9, do you have any preliminary matters you'd like to address?
Yes, Your Honor. First, we ask that at any time the court cannot see or hear a lawyer that is speaking, a witness that is testifying, or an exhibit being displayed. We ask the court to interrupt so the problem can be solved.
Yeah, I will certainly do that.
We also ask if technical difficulties stop the trial for 20 to 30 seconds. We ask the court to direct the timers to stop the clock until the trial can proceed.
I will do that as well, and it can be difficult, especially for the timekeepers, to know exactly when to stop. So if we do end up with discrepancies between timekeepers, I will make sure it's resolved fairly one way or the other, but it's just something we're probably going to run into.
Also, we ask that under Competition Rule 7.4, may we screen share documents and exhibits before they have been admitted, with the understanding that the jury will constructively not see them until they are admitted.
That would be perfectly fine.
Lastly, under Competition Rules 7.4 and 4.7, a team may use Zoom annotation features to mark the exhibits electronically. Once an exhibit is admitted, would you like us to ask for permissions to mark the exhibit?
No need to ask for permission, just mark them however you feel appropriate.
Thank you. No more preliminary matters for the prosecution.
Are there any matters that the defense would like to address?
We just ask that all matters brought by the prosecution extended to the defense.
Done. All right, I think we are ready to start. Team 9, are you prepared?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Team 8, are you prepared as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, the prosecution can give its opening statement. You can start when you're ready.
Thank you. Give me 1 minute to set up my camera.
That's fine. And just before you start, just if you could give us your name again, we would appreciate it.
Your Honor, can you see and hear me all right?
Yes, there's a little bit of delay in your broadcast. So if we lose the signal or something like that, I will let you know.
Yes, and if that happens, may I turn off my camera? Sometimes that helps with audio quality.
That'll be acceptable under the circumstances. Absolutely.
Thank you. And my name is Audra Snyder.
Okay, thank you. You can start when you're ready.
The right place at the right time. Avery Becker was naturally very good at mock trial. So good, they won awards at state, a high honor in the mock trial world. However, Avery Becker was often at odds with their mock trial coach, Mackenzie Brackman. Mr. Brackman repeatedly and publicly criticized Avery Becker. Avery Becker told their mother that they would get back at Brackman if it was the last thing they ever did. The right place at the right time. Today, you will hear about text messages that Avery Becker sent to a fellow mock trial student regarding their plans to break in and vandalize Mr. Brackman's home. But when Avery Becker got there, they were surprised by Mr. Brackman, and the two started to struggle over a knife. Finally, Avery Becker got control over the knife and stabbed Mr. Brackman to death. The right place at the right time. Today, Avery Becker, the defendant, is being charged with murder in the first degree and burglary in the second degree. The prosecution has the burden of proof to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker was in the right place at the right time, and that the defendant committed felony murder and broke into Mr. Brackman's house with the intent to vandalize and burglarize, and that Mr. Brackman died during the course of that burglary. You will hear today from Alex Cifuentes. He will testify about the text messages that the defendant sent to his phone regarding their plans to break in and vandalize Mr. Brackman's house. You will also hear from Alex Cifuentes about the poor relationship between the defendant and Mr. Brackman. Next, you will hear from Kyle Kuzak, a crime scene reconstruction investigator. Ms. Kuzak will testify about the physical evidence found at the crime scene and how this was a burglary gone wrong. Finally, you will hear from Detective Jordan Markowitz, an expert in cell phone data analysis. He will testify that the defendant was in the right place at the right time, and that the police obtained valuable data from the defendant's phone, placing them at the scene of the crime around the time of Mr. Brackman's death. He will testify that the defendant's phone connected 3 times to the cell tower nearest to Mr. Brackman's house. 1 time is a coincidence. 2 times is a coincidence. 3 times, there's a reason. Today, you will hear from 3 witnesses testifying about the poor relationship between the defendant and Mr. Brackman, testifying that this was a burglary gone wrong, and that the defendant was in the right place at the right time. At the end of this trial, my co-counsel, Mr. Falconetti, will ask you for a verdict of guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Is the defense prepared to give an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you are Mr. Boggett?
Yeah, my name is Braden Boggett.
Boggett, got it. Thank you. Go ahead.
Members of the jury, today I present Avery Becker, who the prosecution is wrongly persecuting for first-degree murder and second-degree burglary of a dwelling. Our defense team calls upon you to find the investigation and subsequent prosecution's case against Avery was rushed, reactionary, and reprehensible. Today, the prosecution has the burden of proof. This means to side with them, you must truly believe there isn't even a doubt in their case. If our defense team plants even one seed of doubt in your minds based on the rushed, reactionary, and reprehensible case for the persecuted Avery Becker, it is your duty to side with the defense and give a verdict of not guilty. Let's begin with the prosecution's witnesses. First, Detective Markowitz, whose case is based on a lot of assumptions. Any paths or leads that may have gone against his initial theory were discarded. He features cell phone data, but refused to look into the possibility of Avery's cell phone being stolen. Despite his major responsibility to prove beyond a reasonable doubt of a suspect's guilt, Markowitz decided to rush through his murder investigation based on his reactionary assumptions, which led him to overlook vital details and possible alternative suspects. suspects like Blair Rowlands, another high school student whose dad was sent to prison after the victim, Mackenzie Brackman, failed to defend him. For an investigator, this is reprehensible. Next, there's Alex Fuentes, a member of the Colorado High mock trial team. The prosecution will try to use Alex to cloud your perception of Avery, as they know their case cannot stand on their investigation alone. I urge you to see through this distortion and that it is in reality created from Alex, a jealous rival of Avery's. The initial version Detective Markowitz heard was from Alex, so naturally their entire investigation was conceived and constructed around it. And lastly, prosecution, there's Kyle Kuzak, who uses so-called revolutionary techniques based around preconceived assumptions to reconstruct crime scenes. We will show that Kuzak ill-performed there due to their investigation being clouded by confirmation bias and a strong reluctance to validate their theory, falsely persecuting Avery Becker. Now there's our witnesses for the defense. There's Professor Blake Van Owens, who's an expert in police practices and a private investigator who thrives when it comes to finding things in cases that the police overlooked. Professor Van Owens' testimony will illustrate the fact that Detective Markowitz and Kyle's investigation was based on reactionary assumptions and consequently rushed. Then there is Taylor Perkins, best friend of Avery. As his best friend, Taylor Perkins knows best hand that while Avery is passionate, she in no way is capable of harming a human being. Taylor will also apply several key facts about the circumstances surrounding Avery's missing phone, as well as an alibi for Avery on the day of the murder. Lastly, let's talk about Avery Becker himself. Avery does thrive at mock trial, but this does not mean that he's willing to throw away his life for it. Avery Becker is a truly decent and passionate person who's made a few mistakes, like many teenagers have, but these mistakes in no way justify a rushed, reactionary, and reprehensible persecution. Rushed, reactionary, reprehensible. The investigation was lazily rushed as the investigators chose to base it on reactionary assumptions from the very first day they came across. And this led them to overlook vital details that can change a young person's life. This case was also reactionary. These assumptions create confirmation bias and a strong reluctance to validate their theory. The prosecution investigators' choice to rush through a murder case based on their reactionary assumptions is reprehensible. Members of the jury, please ask yourselves if you could live with the fact that you knowingly sentenced a young person, taking years of their life from them based on a shaky, unreliable, and rushed case. Do you wish to join the prosecution today and reprehensible actions by ignoring the plentiful holes of doubt in their theory? We, the defense, employ you look at all angles of the evidence and of this case, as this time is dire and monumental for Avery, and only you, the jury, have the power to halt this heinous persecution by siding with us, the defense, and giving a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bogut. Is the prosecution prepared to call the first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Alex Fuentes to the stand.
Okay, do we have the witness and opposing counsel as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, go ahead. You can start when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Alex Fuentes. I was a junior at Colorado High School when Coach was killed.
And how do you know the defendant in today's case?
We've always been really good friends. Back when I was a freshman and I really didn't know anybody, Avery was the one that reached out to me and got me to join the mock trial team with them.
And how was your mock trial experience with Becker?
Man, our entire team was skilled, and that included Avery. She was great at just making stuff up on the fly and getting people to believe her. They had this uncanny ability to just make stuff up. It got us a lot of wins.
Now, around the time of the murder, did you ever witness anything strange happen during practice?
Yeah, at the practice after the regional tournament, something odd happened.
What was this?
So, Mr. Brackman was getting all upset at Avery after the tournament, saying that she should start.
Objection.
I'm sorry, I heard objection. I didn't hear the second part of it.
Yes, Your Honor. Objection, hearsay.
Any response?
Your Honor, this is a statement by party opponent, therefore not hearsay.
Mr. Bogut, any further arguments?
This statement is from the victim, and it could cloud the perception for the jury.
At this point, I'll overrule it and allow it in. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Was this kind of thing common between Avery and Mr. Brackman?
Yeah, Mr. Brackman would get on her case pretty frequently about saying that they should start practicing good lawyering and not just focus on good looks.
Did Becker do anything after this argument?
Yeah, this specific time after the regionals, he lost it.
What did he do?
He grabbed this permanent marker from the classroom, went outside and wrote worst attorney award all over Coach's luxury ride.
Was there any way that Becker could have potentially confused the Sharpie with a dry erase marker?
Come on now, they don't even look alike.
How did Mr. Brackman respond?
Well, he responded like any sensible person would and kicked her right off the team. Don't just mess with someone's ride like that. In my opinion, he should have pressed charges.
Did you have any contact with Becker after this incident?
Yeah, afterwards, she sent me these wild texts.
And did you ever show these text messages to the police?
Yeah, when they called me down to interview me, I showed them screenshots of them.
And why did you not give the police your phone?
Well, it was an old phone and it really wouldn't keep a charge. But honestly, in all the pandemonium, I sort of got overwhelmed and straight up forgot it.
Now, Mr. Fuentes, is Exhibit 14, could you please turn to Exhibit 14? Would my co-counsel please start screen sharing? Thank you. Is this a clear and accurate representation of the text messages that you received?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to enter the gray text messages into evidence.
Is there any objection to the contents of Exhibit 14 being admitted?
Yes, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Is there any response to that objection?
Yes, Your Honor. As we are only entering the gray text messages, which are the received ones, they are a statement of a party opponent, therefore not hearsay.
Okay, I think those are admissible, so that portion of Exhibit 14 will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Cifuentes, could you please read the text messages that you received?
Yeah, Avery goes, well, if he's still upset about his car, then he's going to be really upset when he sees what I do to his house. And he goes on to say, I'm going to wait until he's at work, then break in and trash it.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there any cross-exam?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can start when you're ready.
All right. Hello, Mr. Cifuentes. You were a part of mock trial at CHS, right?
Mm-hmm, I am.
And you spent a lot of time working pretty hard on mock trial, right?
Yeah, our entire team is skilled.
So it's fair to say that you really wanted to succeed at mock trial then.
Of course, we all did.
Yet on the other hand, you didn't approve of how Avery Becker handled mock trial compared to your standards, correct?
We definitely had different ways of going about it, yeah.
And Avery's attitude made you upset, right?
Yeah, it did.
Anyhow, despite their methods, Avery consistently won awards for the mock trial team, right?
Right, like I said earlier, our entire team was skilled, and that included Avery.
And despite your much better preparation style, you never won an award for the mock trial team, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And you said that Mr. Brackman rightfully demoted Avery for simply having this different method of preparation.
It was more complicated than that.
And with Avery off the team, you finally had a better chance to prove yourself, correct?
I was elevated to a bigger role with her gone, or with him gone, yeah.
But you never got the chance as Taylor dropped out to support Avery, right?
That's true.
And this put Avery back on the A team, forcing you to once again compete with Avery's natural talent, right?
I like the competition.
And it annoyed you that Avery was reinstated, didn't it?
I mean, yeah, because the team didn't like it. Didn't like the way that he went about mock trial.
It also annoyed you that Avery went on, after being reinstated, to win the Best Attorney and Closing Argument awards, correct?
A little bit, yeah.
In fact, you said that Avery was only able to succeed because of their good looks, without any hard work or talent.
Look, just because we disagreed on mock trial didn't mean that we were still good friends.
Yet, you said Avery, when he won an award, it was a slap in the face, right?
I was a bit emotional then, but like I said, we're still good friends despite our differences.
And you said that Avery and you were pretty much almost equally skilled team members, correct?
Yeah.
Yet you contributed far less to the team than Avery did.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that, no.
So even if Avery had a different method, he still always pulled through in the end for the team, unlike you, correct?
I was still on the team that got multiple victories. It was all a team effort.
Mm-hmm. And let's focus on the effect of Avery being permanently kicked off. So Mr. Brackman's decision was going to force your team to forfeit state, right?
Yes.
And you say, like you, the rest of the team was really upset with Avery because of this.
Yeah, because we've been working so hard by that point.
In response,
really let everyone down.
And in response, the entire team supported and tried to help Avery, right?
We wanted to compete in state.
You believe the reason why Avery texted you for help was because you were friends?
Yes.
Yeah, for the sake of the team, Avery tried many ways to rejoin, not just through you specifically, correct?
But he still went through me with those crazy texts.
But not only you.
Correct.
And even despite having to forfeit state, you still thought that the team was, in general, far better off without Avery, correct?
I thought the morale was higher with her gone, yeah.
You also meant that you were excited as you wouldn't have to compete against Avery's skill, right?
True, yes.
And in general, you would have benefited greatly from Avery being off the mock trial team permanently, correct?
The team, I think, would have benefited because just the anxiety that was lifted from our shoulder.
Let's move to the investigation and your influence on it. You got a call from Detective Markowitz about this case, and in response, he provided screenshots?
Yes, that's correct. Screenshots of the text that Avery sent me.
You thought these messages were important.
I mean, he said that he was gonna trash the house, and then the next day, the house was trashed and Mr. Brackman was dead. So, yeah, I thought they were pretty important.
Yet you didn't think to bring this important phone with you to a police station for the interview.
I showed the police the screenshots of it.
And in fact, Detective Markowitz was fine with you sending him only remote screenshots rather than the physical phone, right?
But still, I gave him the screenshots.
And this is even after you offered him your physical phone.
Yes.
He didn't ask you for any further verification of these screenshots, right?
I guess he figured the screenshots were enough.
You currently have no idea where the phone that took these screenshots is, despite their importance in today's case, correct?
It was an old phone and it really wouldn't keep a charge. No use in keeping it around. So I sold it and got a new one.
You didn't think it would be important to keep a backup hard copy of these messages as you knew it was dying?
The police had the screenshots of it.
And later, when a private investigator asked you about these messages, you stopped complying and evaded her questions, correct?
I knew that private investigator only was going to try to trick me. That's what all these defense private investigators do. I know. I've seen Law and Order.
You didn't think it was justified for an investigator to verify a piece of evidence that the prosecution and yourself view as important?
I gave that piece of evidence to the actual investigators, the police.
And you reacted in a rude manner because you thought the investigator had ulterior motives, correct?
Well, we're here in trial, so yeah, he did have ulterior motives.
You, as a high school student, know more than an experienced private investigator.
Like I said, I've seen Law and Order. I know a little bit about these so-called investigators.
But this is your perceived opinion about the investigator, not fact.
I think it's pretty factual. But that's
And Leslie, you saw Avery at the Fry Shack the day before Mr. Brackman died, correct?
That's correct.
And during this time, you used Avery's phone.
Yeah, he let me play games on it.
So you had an opportunity to use it to make text messages, correct?
No, that's not correct. I was just playing games on it with Avery.
Mm-hmm. And this was the same phone that sent the messages that you later took a screenshot of.
That's correct.
This is also the same phone that Avery and Taylor had to search for the next day, correct?
I don't know if they were actually searching for it, but...
Yeah, thank you. No further questions.
Is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Now, Mr. Cifuentes, were you and Avery friends?
Yes, we were very close friends.
And what was Avery's attitude towards mock trial?
I mean, she was good at it, but she didn't like doing all the preparation work for it.
Did this change the fact that you two were friends?
No. Look, Avery was one of the first friends that I got in high school, all the way back in freshman year. Just because we had different ideas about mock trial didn't mean that we were any less of friends.
Did your rivalry get in the way of this friendship at all?
No, it didn't. It was a friendly rivalry.
And why did you only send screenshots to the police?
Because I forgot my phone when I went into the into the station interview.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Let me just verify everyone's names. For the prosecution, Bella Burgess as attorney, Spencer Wilcox as witness, and then Braden Bogut for the defense, correct? All right, I see everybody nodding their heads. Thank you. The prosecution can call the next witness.
At this time, the prosecution calls Kyle Kuzak to the stand.
All right, do we have both the witness and the attorney for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you can start when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Ms. Kuzak. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Kyle Kuzak.
And what's your current job?
I'm a crime scene reconstruction investigator for the DPD, or the Denver Police Department.
How long have you worked for the Denver Police Department?
I've spent roughly the last 3 years of my tenure at the DPD.
And what do you do for the DPD?
I'm a crime scene reconstruction investigator. I investigate complex crime scenes such as homicides, robberies, domestic violence, things like that.
And do you have any experience, certifications, or training in crime scene reconstruction?
Yes, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation certified me as a crime scene reconstruction investigator, or as we like to call it, a CSR.
At this time, the prosecution moves to tender Kyle Kuzak as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Is there any objection to that designation?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, the witness is so designated, you can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Kuzak, what is your role in today's case?
I served as the crime scene reconstruction investigator.
And when did Mr. Brackman, the victim, die?
Mr. Brackman died on March 6th of 2020.
And at the crime scene, what did the police find?
Well, the police found the victim's body just inside the front door. There were several pools of blood around the victim's body and several other things.
And what did you observe at the crime scene?
I observed a trail of blood spatters leading from the kitchen to the victim's body. I observed several pools of blood around the victim's body. There was also a broken plate in the kitchen. There was a knocked over chair, and there were some scuff marks in Mr. Brackman's kitchen.
Would you recognize pictures of the body, the pools of blood, and other things that you saw in that house?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, permission to screen share Exhibit 3 and Exhibit 5.
Go ahead.
Co-counsel, pull those up. Ms. Kuzak, what is this exhibit?
This is a close-up image of the victim's body, specifically the knife wound.
Can you please move to Exhibit 5? Thank you. What is this?
This is a picture of the knife used as the murder weapon in this case.
At this time, the prosecution moves to admit Exhibits 3 and 5 into evidence.
Is there any objection to the admission of those exhibits?
Yes, Your Honor. I object to these photos being presidential over probative.
Is there any response?
Yes, Your Honor. These pictures are not more prejudicial than probative because they are key pieces of the crime scene, and it is not prejudicial to show pictures of a brutal murder. They are not needlessly graphic, and the prejudice does not outweigh the probative value. They help show what happened at the crime scene.
Okay, the exhibits are what they are, and I think they're admissible as such. So the objection is overruled, and those two exhibits are admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Are these two pictures, for the record, a fair and accurate copy of what you observed at the crime scene?
Absolutely.
And have they been tampered with in any way?
No, they have not.
Ms. Kuzak, what other things did you notice around the house?
I noticed some scuff marks, the broken plate, the overturned chair. I noticed a knife missing from the knife block. That is pretty much it.
Co-counsel, you can stop sharing. Thank you very much. Moving on, Ms. Kuzak, did the Brackman home have a security system?
Yes, Mr. Brackman had a doorbell ring video system with several quick cameras located around the house.
And did these cameras pick up anything of value on March 6th, 2020?
Yes, there were several cameras that picked up a masked and gloved perpetrator walking around the residence.
And would you recognize videos pulled from the security system of what you just described?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, permission to play Exhibit 12 and Exhibit 13.
Go ahead.
Co-counsel? Ms. Kuzak, what was shown in that video?
Exhibit 12 was a video of the perpetrator entering the house or the residence through the back door.
And co-counsel, could we play Exhibit 13? Thank you, co-counsel. You can stop sharing. Ms. Kuzak, what did that video show?
Exhibit 13 showed the perpetrator running out the front door.
Are these videos fair and accurate copies of what you saw from the Brackman security system?
Absolutely.
Have they been tampered with or edited in any way that you know of?
They have not.
At this time, the prosecution moves to admit Exhibits 12 and 13 into evidence.
Is there any objection to the admission of either of those exhibits?
No, Your Honor.
Both are admitted. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. What did those videos show?
Those videos showed the intruder entering the residence through the back door and fleeing the residence to the front door.
Now, Ms. Kuzak, I would like to review the conclusions that you drew from this case. First, how did you conclude that the perpetrator entered the house?
I concluded the perpetrator entered through the back door of the residence, as seen in Exhibit 12.
And what did you conclude about what happened next?
Well, the victim was alerted of the perpetrator's presence, the Ring video doorbell systems, and the victim looked for a defensive weapon in his kitchen, and then the perpetrator and the victim started to struggle over that defensive weapon.
And how did you know there was a struggle between the victim and the perpetrator?
Well, I knew there was a struggle through the broken plate, the scuff marks. There was also an overturned chair.
And after that struggle, what did you conclude happened next?
Well, towards the end of the struggle, the perpetrator was able to gain control of the defensive weapon or the knife, and they were able to stab the victim with it. And then the perpetrator fled the scene, and the victim followed the perpetrator towards the front door. The victim then removed the knife, and he quickly died before hitting the ground.
And what did you conclude was the cause of Mr. Brackman's death?
The cause of death was excessive blood loss due to a knife being removed from the wound.
And overall, Ms. Kuzak, what did you conclude after your crime scene reconstruction and investigation?
I concluded that this case was a planned burglary gone bad.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there any cross?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Go ahead.
All right. Hello, Ms. Kuzak. So just have a few questions for you. So you're not a police officer, correct?
No, I am a civilian employee for the Denver Police Department. I serve as a crime scene reconstruction investigator.
So you're not a police officer?
And no, I'm not a police officer.
Van Owens, the police officer on this case, reached a different conclusion, correct?
That's true.
Nowhere in your witness statement did you mention any schooling that you received to be considered an expert in crime scene reconstruction, correct?
Could you repeat that question? It cut out for a second.
Oh, no, you're good. Nowhere in your witness statement did you mention any schooling that you received to be considered an expert in crime scene reconstruction, correct?
Well, I was certified by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation as a certified reconstruction investigator.
But you didn't have any schooling.
That's true.
Additionally, you failed to provide any sort of CV.
That is correct.
Furthermore, there's no point in your witness statement at which you discuss any prior experience in testifying in front of court, right?
I have done I have 19 years of experience doing this job. Even though I have not testified in court, I have 19 years of experience as a certified crime scene reconstruction investigator.
Okay, so is that yes or no?
No.
Okay. Is it true the digital files of the photos from the crime scene later became partially corrupted?
That is true, but I was able to draw my conclusions from those pictures before they became corrupted.
So pretty much they were lost.
That is correct.
Now, isn't it true that the witness evidence, like which you examined during your analysis, can be proved to be fallible?
Yes, that is correct.
Is it true that you weren't able to recreate the entire event or place all the evidence?
I was able to place most of the evidence through my reconstruction investigation.
But not all?
No, not all.
And is it true that the knife found in the body was different than the knife block?
Yes, but as I concluded in my investigation, it is very common for people to replace the knives that either become dull or unusable.
So was that a yes?
Yes.
And no fingerprints or DNA evidence were received from the crime scene itself, correct?
That is actually very common in these crime scenes, that there isn't much DNA or fingerprints. Fingerprints and DNA are actually not as easy to come off people as one might think.
Okay, so is that yes or no?
And no.
That's all, Your Honor.
Is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Kuzak, did you use all pertinent and important physical evidence from the crime scene to draw your conclusions and to complete your crime scene reconstruction?
Absolutely.
That's all.
Okay, let me make sure I've got all of your names. I've got Audra Snyder as the attorney for the prosecution, Freya Naj as and I apologize if I got your last name wrong again, as the witness, and Julia Spahalik as the attorney for the defense. Okay, I see everybody nodding their heads. Thank you. The prosecution can call the next witness.
The prosecution calls Detective Jordan Markowitz to the stand.
All right, do we have our witness and the defense attorney as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can go ahead and start.
Before I begin, can I ask for a time check? All right, thank you. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Good afternoon. My name is Detective Jordan Markowitz.
What do you do for a living?
Well, Detective, I'm a I'm a homicide detective for the Denver Police Department.
How are you involved in today's case?
I investigated the death of Mackenzie Brackman, sir.
How long have you worked at the Denver Police Department?
Well, sir, I've been with the DPD for the past 13 years, the most recent 7 being as a homicide detective.
Could you tell us what sort of cases you've investigated?
All sorts of cases. Back when I was a rookie, small stuff, all the way to, obviously now, homicides.
Do you have any specialized training?
Yes, sir, I do. I'm certified in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery, both certifications I got from the American Academy of Law Enforcement.
What did you have to do to become certified?
I had to attend a training course and then pass a certification test.
Could you also tell us what sort of experience you have working with cell phone data?
I have a lot of experience, sir. I've downloaded the contents of hundreds of cell phones. I've also had to interpret cell tower data in at least 50 cases at this point.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to tender Detective Jordan Markowitz as an expert in cell phone data recovery and analysis.
Is there any objection to that designation?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to conduct a brief voir dire.
Sure, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Detective Markowitz. How long exactly was the course you took in order to attain your specialized training with cell phones?
Let me say it was a very lengthy 3 days.
All right. And what was the exact title of your certification?
Objection, relevance.
Any response?
I'm simply trying to specify the exact scope to which his certification applies in this case.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yeah, go ahead.
Your Honor, I don't see how the official title for the course Detective Markowitz took is relevant to his expertise.
I think that's a fair question when inquiring about qualifications. So overruled. You can go ahead.
Would you like me to repeat the question, Detective?
Yes, Counselor.
What was the exact title of the certification you received from the American Academy of Law Enforcement?
I believe it was cell phone technology and forensic data recovery. I'm not certain on the exact wording.
Okay. Now, in that certification, does it say anything about locating suspects using cell phones?
We could track suspects' movements based upon which cell phones which cell towers their phone connects to.
But anywhere in your certification or the training that you talked about in your direct examination, did you discuss your ability to locate suspects based on that training?
Objection. Outside the scope of voir dire, prosecution never moved to tender Detective Markowitz as an expert in locating people through cell phone data.
Any response? I think Mr. Kern might be having some connection problems. So let's pause the clocks for a second.
The prosecution.
So let's pause the clocks for just a second. Mr. Kern, it looks like your connection's kind of fading in and out. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now. So let's restart the clocks. Did you hear all of that objection?
I did. May I respond?
Go ahead.
If the prosecution does not wish to use Detective Markowitz's certifications for the purpose of locating suspects, then we have no further objections. But assuming Detective Markowitz would like to speak to the location of any suspects or to locating any suspects using cell tower data, we believe that this question should still stand.
Mr. Falconetti, do you have any further response?
Yes, Your Honor. We believe that this tendering does qualify Detective Markowitz to determine the movements of a suspect based off of cell phone data. However, the exact tendering never zeroes in on that.
Okay, I think it's a fair question to ask, being as the subject might come up. So you can proceed.
Your Honor, the defense has no objection to the witness being admitted as an expert in the field of police investigation, but asks that he not be admitted as an expert in cell phone technology or forensic data recovery due to the lack of extensive training as it relates to the scope of the case.
All right, Mr. Falconetti, is there any argument you'd like to make?
Yes, Your Honor. We've laid foundation to establish that Detective Markowitz has plenty of experience working with cell phone data.
Okay, I think the witness has the requisite qualifications to be qualified in those fields. So he's admitted as an expert as requested by the prosecution.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Detective, did you obtain any cell phone records in this case?
Yes, sir, I did. I obtained records for the defendant's phone.
Why did you obtain the defendant's cell phone records?
Well, Counselor, I'd become aware of the fact that Avery Becker and Mackenzie Brackman had known each other, and the two had had a recent disagreement. I had also become aware of text messages that Avery Becker had sent to Alex Cifuentes about plans to trash Mr. Brackman's house.
What did you conclude from these cell phone records?
After analyzing all the records in this case, Counselor, I determined that Avery Becker was at the scene of the crime at the time of the murder.
Can you describe the cell phone records you obtained?
Yes, sir. I got a court order to obtain the account records for the defendant's phone.
What did these account records show?
Well, the account records are CDRs as I obtained. They show the date and time of a communication, who was involved in that communication, whether that communication was incoming or outgoing, along with the most telling piece, which cell tower the phone was communicating with.
With that in mind, do CDRs show you where a person was at a particular time?
Not exactly. However, we can determine the movements of a suspect based upon which towers their phone connects to.
With that in mind, Detective, were you able to determine the movements of the defendant on the afternoon of March 6, 2020?
Yes, Counselor, I was.
Please elaborate.
I was able to track which cell towers Avery Becker's phone connected to, and I was able to plot the interactions on a map.
Would you recognize the map you made if I showed it to you?
Yes, Counselor, I would.
Your Honor, permission to screen share Exhibit 16.
Go ahead.
Can everyone see Exhibit 16?
Detective, can you tell us what this is?
Yes, sir. This is the map I created of the interactions with Miss Becker's cell phones, along with the various cell towers.
Has it been altered or modified in any way?
No, Counselor, it has not.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to admit Exhibit 16 into evidence.
Is there any objection to the admission of this exhibit?
Your Honor, Exhibit 16 is hearsay.
Is there any response?
Yes, Your Honor. This document falls under Rule 803-8, which stipulates that any public records are not hearsay. Seeing as this is a document produced by the police department, I believe that this document falls under that definition.
Mr. Kern, do you have any further argument?
No, we're satisfied with that.
Okay, I think this is admissible, so the exhibit it's admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, on the afternoon of March 6, what time was the first communication with the defendant's phone?
One moment, Counselor, sorry. The first communication was at 12:47 p.m. out of cell tower. This area covers the defendant's house as marked here.
Sorry, Detective, could you state again what tower that came out of? You got cut off a bit.
Can everyone hear me now?
Yes, you're fine. Go ahead.
That communication occurred at 12:47 p.m. out of cell tower 1227-3, which covers the area which includes Avery Becker's house.
What is the next communication with the defendant's phone?
The next communication occurs at 12:55 p.m. out of cell tower 1191-1. This area covers Rock Creek Parkway.
Where does that indicate to you that Avery Becker was at that time?
At this time, this indicates to me that the defendant was driving along Rock Creek Parkway.
What was the next communication with the defendant's phone, Detective?
The last communications were at 1:05, 1:06, and 1:17 p.m. out of cell tower 1197-1 over here. This covers the area which includes Mackenzie Brackman's house.
With all of this in mind, Detective, in your expert opinion, Was Avery Becker at the victim's house at the time of the victim's murder?
All right, Counselor, based upon analyzing all of the cell phone records and data, I have determined that Avery Becker was indeed at Mackenzie Brackman's house during this time.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, Mr. Kern, do you have any cross-exam?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Hello again, Detective. I'd like to begin with the state of the crime scene when you arrived. Now, you said that the house was in a slight disarray at the time of your entrance. Is that correct?
It was a little disheveled, more than
And
my
you also-
house, you know.
You also said that there was no way to determine if this disarray was the result of the struggle. Is that also correct?
That is correct. Many homes look the same, you know. You can't tell if it's people are just a tad bit messy.
Yet the case against Avery Becker largely hinges on the idea that there was a struggle without any specific evidence. Is that true, Detective?
Counselor, could you repeat that question, please?
Yeah, let me jump in for just a second. Pause the clocks for right now. Mr. Kern, let me get you to try to switch your video off because there's a big lag there and I think we might lose you.
Is that better?
Yeah, so far so good. Restart the clocks and ask your question again.
All right. You said, let's see. The case against Avery Becker largely hinges on the idea that there was a struggle, yet there's no specific evidence of that. Is that true, Detective?
I mean, the house was messy. There's a broken plate.
But you did say there was no way to determine if any of the disarray was the result of a struggle. Is that true?
That is true, Counselor.
You also took pictures of the crime scene that were destroyed by a technical failure. Is that true?
Our crime scene investigators did that, but yes.
Yes. And you're claiming to have enough technical expertise to present the key evidence in this case, the phone records?
Yes, Counselor. I have education in cell phone data and forensic data recovery.
Right. You also discussed the nature of Mackenzie Brackman's blood patterns. Are you a blood spatter expert, Detective?
No, I'm a homicide detective. I've seen plenty of homicides, sir.
But you are not a blood spatter expert?
No, sir.
Detective, I'd like to move on to some of your assumptions that you made during the case. Now, you said that the culprit could be a disgruntled ex-client, but you never pursued the possibility of this during your investigation, did you?
Well, I determined that that was very unlikely, Counselor.
You also said that it seemed highly unlikely that Brackman's mock trial activity had anything to do with his death. Is that also correct?
At the time, I said that, yes.
Yet this mock trial lead was the lead you chose to pursue over the possibility of a disgruntled ex-client.
Well, Counselor, I had downloaded the contents of Mackenzie Brackman's cell phone, which led me to an abundance of emails and other information related to mock trial. So that's where I decided to take the investigation from there.
Right. I'd like to go to that cell phone data next, Detective. Now, are the call detail records you obtained able to provide you with the specific location of any phone?
Not based off of just that one interaction. However, I was able to track the multiple interactions with the various cell towers from Avery Becker's phone and the 3 separate connections at the tower closest to Mackenzie Brackman's house.
Is there any way to determine who's in possession of the phone when the CDRs are taken?
You know, we just track the phone based off of that. So not exactly, no.
Okay. You also point out that all of the calls and texts were very short. Is that correct?
The calls were very short, which led me to believe they were unanswered.
Isn't it possible that these calls were made in an attempt to locate Becker's phone, as is consistent with his alibi?
I mean, possibly, but you know, they could be lying for all I know.
Sure. Is it also possible that the location of the phone could just as easily show the phone's thief driving on a nearby road?
I mean, possibly, but I don't know if the phone was stolen.
Detective, are you aware of the exact radius in which CDR can be taken?
120 degrees, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the answer.
120 degrees is the radius of one of the antennas, right?
And what distance, in terms of miles, from an antenna can a phone record be taken?
I'm not sure, Counselor.
I believe that it was 6 miles. Is within 6 miles enough to accurately determine the specific location of a phone?
Evidently.
Now, you immediately assumed that this showed the path of Avery Becker with no other evidence. Is that correct?
Well, sir, I'd seen that Avery Becker's cell phone was connecting to the various cell towers at the different times, along with the 3 connections at Mackenzie Brackman's house. This led me to believe that it was Avery Becker.
There are no witnesses that claim to have seen Becker at the scene of the crime. Is that correct?
Well, I would assume so. The murder happened inside his house, so I wouldn't expect there to be that many witnesses.
So the only eyewitness here today is testifying to the alibi of Avery Becker?
And who would that be again, Counselor?
That would be Taylor Perkins.
I mean, I think they might know each other. I'm not sure.
Okay. Now, when at the scene of the crime, did you gather any forensic evidence?
There was not an abundance of evidence left. The perpetrator was wearing gloves, so it was very hard to find any sort of that type of evidence.
So it's fair to say there was no tangible evidence whatsoever that my client was at the scene of the crime?
Well, I believe the CDRs in themselves are very telling, Counselor.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Falconetti, do you have any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Detective, did you personally lose the photos in this investigation?
No, unfortunately, the photos our crime scene team took, they unfortunately became corrupted. However, they bear no weight in today's case.
Thank you. And did you cover all relevant evidence to make your conclusion?
Of course, Counselor.
Could you state again what your conclusion with the alternate suspect was?
I concluded that because of the interactions that Avery Becker's cell phone had with the various cell towers, along with the multiple communications at the tower closest to Mackenzie Brackman's house, that Avery Becker was indeed at the scene of the crime at the time of the murder.
Were call detail records enough for you to determine the travel of Avery Becker on March 6th?
They were indeed, Counselor.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, thank you all. Let me just confirm the names of everybody that we have. We have Henry Falconetti as the attorney for the prosecution, Daniel Nakayama as the witness, and Cooper Kern as the defense attorney, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay, I think I see everybody nodding, so thank you all. And I believe that's the last witness for the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution rests.
All right, is the defense prepared to call their first witness?
Yes, the defense calls Professor Blake Vano to the stand. Would you like me to leave my camera off for the remainder of this direct?
You know what, let's give it a try with it on. If we run into trouble, I'll let you know and you can switch it off again.
Okay, thank you.
And let me just confirm that we've got a prosecution attorney and our witness.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can go ahead and start when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Professor Owen. Can you please state your full name and spell your last for the court?
My name is Professor Blake Van Owen. Van Owen spelled V-A-N-O-W-E-N.
And what is your occupation?
I teach police practices and social justice at the University of Colorado, Denver. I've done that for 5 years now. And I also work as a private investigator and an expert witness.
Where did you receive your education, Mr. Owen?
After teaching in a community college setting for a short time, I received my master's from Ashford University.
And do you have any firsthand experience in law enforcement?
Yes, I do. I was a member of the Aurora Police Department, although I did end up leaving the department after an altercation involving a sanctioned police procedure that unfortunately ended up hurting an arrestee. I do greatly regret that incident, but it did help me see the flaws in active police procedure.
Have you ever testified as an expert witness before?
Yes, I have. I've been accepted as an expert witness in U.S. district courts in Colorado, Kansas, and Arizona, as well as state courts in Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, and New Mexico.
And in what disciplines were you previously admitted?
I've been admitted in crime scene reconstruction 8 times, cell tower analysis 5 times, and general police investigation tactics 12 times.
Your Honor, at this point, I move to designate Professor Van Owen as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics pursuant to Rule 704.
Is there any objection to those designations?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the prosecution requests a brief voir dire.
Go ahead.
Now, you were once, let's talk about your experience with crime scene reconstruction. You have never had any formal training in this field.
No, not formally, no.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
No, not formally, no.
And you also don't have any certifications in this field.
No, I do not, but I've been admitted as an expert before.
However, you still don't have any certifications or formal training.
No.
You also don't have any formal training on cell phone data.
No.
You don't have any certifications in this field either.
No, but it's another field I've been admitted in before.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution objects to Blake Van Owen being entered as an expert witness in the given fields.
Mr. Kern, do you have any argument that you'd like to make?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe the defense laid foundation.
And Mr. Kern, let me interrupt you. Go ahead and shut your video off. You're breaking up on us.
Educate. Is that better? Can you hear me?
I think so. Why don't you start over with your response?
Yes. We believe that the defense has laid proper foundation as to Professor Van Owen's education, experience, and his the times he's testified before.
Okay, I think the witness meets the necessary qualifications, so the designation as requested is made, and you can go ahead.
All right, Professor Owen. Can I direct your attention to what has previously been marked as Exhibit 20?
Of course.
No, I'm going to attempt to screen share. My computer might not be able to handle that. So 1 second. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you please describe this document, Mr. Van Owen?
Yes, this is my report on the investigation by Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak. It contains my opinions on their work, as well as my own expert interpretation of the crime.
And is Exhibit 20 a fair and accurate copy of this report?
Yes, it is.
The defense at this time moves to enter Exhibit 20 into evidence.
Is there any objection to that exhibit being admitted?
Yes, the prosecution objects to hearsay.
Is there any response?
Your Honor, being that Professor Van Owen has been entered as an expert, this falls under the 803 exception to hearsay of an expert witness.
All right, Ms. Burgess, is there any further argument you'd like to make?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I think that exhibit's admitted, so you can go ahead.
Just one moment. My screen shut off real fast.
Okay, let's pause the clock and let us know when you've got it restored.
Okay, I think I had to stop screen sharing it for me to be able to see my screen, but.
Okay, are you ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, restart the clocks and you can proceed.
Now, Professor, what were you hired to do in this case?
I was hired to examine the police procedure and the tactics that led to Avery Becker being named as the prime suspect.
And what investigative measures have you taken?
I've reviewed the police report of Detective Markowitz along with cell phone records that he recovered and his report on those records. I also reviewed Kyle Kuzak's report and other aspects of the investigation that I thought were necessary to uncover the full truth.
And what was your immediate conclusion after looking into these documents?
I believe that this case was very obviously rushed. Detective Markowitz clearly jumped to the easiest conclusion without proper analysis of all of the available evidence.
Do you have any examples of this?
Well, for one, the prosecution's case largely hinges on the idea that Avery Becker used the missing knife from the knife block in Exhibit 8 in order to kill Brackman. This would necessitate a high school student to use expert knife skills in order to somehow disarm somebody who was aware of an active threat and then managed to stab them in the back.
Is this, in your expert opinion, possible?
Considering the fact that the only evidence of an actual struggle is scuff marks on the floor that are impossible to date, and the fact that Brackman was stabbed in the back, I would say it's highly improbable that such a struggle took place, which entirely defeats the prosecution's argument in this case.
Objection, improper expert opinion.
Is there any response?
I believe that Professor Owen was tendered as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, and this falls under that.
Ms. Burgess, any further argument?
Yes. Crime scene reconstruction does not cover the field of if a high schooler would be able to disarm a grown man. If a high schooler is properly trained, it would be perfectly possible.
You know, I'm not sure that's something that requires expert testimony. So the objection's overruled. You can go ahead and answer.
Professor, is this, in your expert opinion, possible?
Considering the fact that the only evidence of an actual struggle was the scuff marks and the fact that Brackman was stabbed in the back, I would say it's highly improbable that such a struggle took place.
Was there any other evidence in the prosecution's report of the struggle that you found troubling?
There was plenty, but one especially troubling aspect was the murder weapon. Kuzak readily acknowledges that the murder weapon was a different brand of knife from the knife missing from the block, something that can be looked in more detail in my report. But Kuzak's report fails to acknowledge the fact that the weapon is clearly inconsistent with the style and blade dimensions of the true murder weapon.
And what exactly does this tell you about Kyle Kuzak's report?
It only furthers my evidence that the entire investigation was rushed. Kuzak took the simple existence of a knife block at the scene of the crime and surmised that it was somehow involved in the murder with no further evidence.
Are there any other facets of the report you feel should be addressed in regards to the murder weapon?
I believe that the entire analysis of the knife attack fails to consider the construction of the weapon. But the main issue is that it would be almost impossible for somebody of Becker's size to stab downward at Brackman and hit the aorta if they were both standing as the autopsy presents.
Thank you, Professor. I'd like to move on to the cell phone tower analysis. Now, what can you tell us about the records provided by Detective Markowitz?
Yet again, I believe this is a gross oversimplification of the evidence on the part of Markowitz and Kuzak. It ultimately leads to an easy yet completely fictitious result. These records show one thing and one thing only, and that's that Becker's phone was near the house at the time of the murder, not Becker himself.
How is it possible that Avery Becker was not near the house if his phone was?
It's very easily possible. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that Becker lost his phone the day before the murder, to which Taylor Perkins has attested, and this is far from a case with no alibi. A phone cannot testify to the whereabouts of a person.
Looking at these call records, what conclusions can one draw about the whereabouts of the phone?
Due to the extremely limited data that Markowitz acquired, essentially nothing. Markowitz assumed that the records placed Becker's phone somewhere near Becker's home and then somewhere near the Brackman home, but since we have a very limited time frame in which to see those positions, as well as the fact that cell tower triangulation is far from GPS accurate, it's essentially useless information.
How do your conclusions with this information differ from those of Detective Markowitz?
Well, Markowitz seems to see a direct probable path. I see a myriad of such paths. Markowitz's conclusion hinges exclusively on Avery Becker carrying that phone.
And why does that matter?
Well, if you remove that variable, the map becomes completely useless. It covers a huge swath of area with no specific information. The only way you could trace the phone to Brackman's murder is by starting at the conclusion rather than starting at the evidence.
Moving on once again, Professor, did you pursue any of the leads that you felt Detective Markowitz did not?
I did. I thought it was suspect that Markowitz and Kuzak only investigated one student for the murder. After doing a little digging, I found a different suspect that I believe should have been investigated but was not, named Blair Rowlands.
Who is this Blair Rowlands?
Blair was a former student at Colorado High School. Mackenzie Brackman had served as a defense attorney for Blair's father. Long story short, Blair's father, Jonathan Rowlands, is now in prison. This would give Blair Rowlands, who also matches the height and build of the suspect and was also absent from school on March 6th, ample motive to break in.
And why was Blair Rowlands not investigated?
Well, I can't testify to the specific motives or intentions of Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak, but in my experience, these leads are only missed by an extreme act of laziness. The fact that this lead was never followed shows how careless the prosecution was in this investigation. We'll never know how many leads the police completely failed to investigate.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Is there any cross?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Now, Professor Van Owen, you were once a police officer, correct?
Yes, I was.
However, you became disillusioned with police work.
Yes.
This was because of its tactics and techniques.
Yes.
You even quit the police force because of this.
Yes, I did.
And you frequently testify as an expert witness, correct?
Yes.
You always testify for the defense.
The defense is the only side who's ever asked me to.
You even think of yourself as a check on the power of the police, correct?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to talk about the cell phone records. You are aware that Avery Becker wasn't at school on March 6th, 2020.
Yes, I was aware of that.
And you are also aware that it is more likely for a cell phone to connect to the nearest cell phone tower, correct?
Yes.
There is a cell phone tower near Brackman's home.
Yes, there is.
The nearest cell phone tower is tower number 1197, correct?
Yes.
Avery Becker's phone connected to this cell tower 3 times on March 6th, correct?
That's true, yes.
Once at 1:05 p.m.,
Yes.
once at 1:06 p.m.,
Yes.
and again at 1:17 p.m.
Yes.
So Avery Becker's phone connected to the cell tower nearest Brackman's house 3 times right around the time of the murder, correct?
Yes, it did.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor. Now, the 3 phone calls that connected to the tower near Brackman's house are consistent with the alibi given by Avery Becker. Is that correct?
Yes, they were fairly short. It's possible that somebody had taken his phone, and was not answering the calls that they were receiving.
No further questions.
All right, thank you, everyone. Let me just verify everybody's name again. We've got Cooper Kern as attorney for the defense, Timothy Fallon as witness, and Bella Burgess as attorney for the prosecution. Is all of that correct? All right, it looks like everybody's nodding. Thank you, and the defense can call the next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Taylor Perkins to the stand.
Okay, let's make sure we've got both your witness and the attorney for the defense. Do we have the witness?
Yes, sorry, hello.
And do we have the defense attorney as well?
The prosecution attorney is here.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant. And it sounds like we do. So you can go ahead.
All right, hello, Ms. Perkins. Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Taylor Perkins, Perkins.
Let's first explore some background information for the jury. Could you please explain a bit about yourself?
Sure. I graduated last year from Colorado High School and am now a freshman at CU Boulder. I joined the CHS mock trial team in my freshman year because my best friend Avery Becker was so passionate about it.
Would you describe some more about that mock trial team you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, we were all pretty good, you know, the A team. We usually competed in higher level stuff like state. Avery was really good, definitely one of the best on the team. I was pretty average, nothing next to Avery, but I carried my own. Like most teams, we had some internal competition. For instance, Alex Cifuentes and Avery always fought over roles, but Avery usually got them since he was just that good.
And how would you describe Mr. Brackman, the mock trial coach?
I don't know, he was a pretty mediocre coach. He might have been a good lawyer, but he didn't really cater to the student when he was coaching. He just went with his one way of doing things. And for some people that was okay, but it didn't really work for Avery.
And other than Avery, were there any other people at school that had connections to Mr. Brackman?
Well, there was the entire mock trial team, obviously, but also Blair Rollins, this other guy at school, he knew Mr. Brackman.
What connection could Blair Rollins have to Mr. Brackman?
Well, Mr. Brackman was a defense lawyer, and in one of his cases, he defended Blair's dad. Mr. Brackman ended up losing the case, and Blair's dad was sent to prison.
Let's next discuss Avery's demotion. What are some of the events that led to Mr. Brackman's decision to demote Avery to the B team?
Well, about a month before the regional tournament last year, Avery showed up pretty unprepared to practice. Mr. Brackman got so mad that he demoted Avery to the B team.
And how did you feel about Avery's demotion?
I thought it was really unfair to the A team. Mr. Brackman completely overreacted. He was always too hard on Avery about hard work, despite his obvious success. It's true that Avery didn't always try his hardest, but Avery still consistently came out on top at competitions and was definitely A team material. Also, it was Avery's senior year. He had put in the work for 4 years and had the awards to prove it.
What did you do in response to this?
I was really only a part of mock trial for Avery, and it meant more to him than it ever did to me, so I dropped out, forcing Mr. Brackman to reinstate Avery on the A team. He deserved to be there. I mean, you can't win the best attorney and best closing argument awards without some skill.
Now I'm going to ask you about Avery being permanently kicked off of the mock trial team. How did you initially learn about Mr. Brackman's decision?
Well, Avery explained to me about how Brackman got mad at him for being unprepared and winning awards without working super hard. And he told me about how he lost his cool and vandalized Coach Brackman's car. His response was to kick Avery off the team completely.
And was this typical of Avery's character?
No, Avery was understandably upset by Brackman getting mad at him, and Avery had a bad lapse of judgment. I mean, he can get heated like anyone else, but Avery doesn't act out rashly with any amount of normalcy.
And what was your view of Mr. Brackman's decision?
I thought it was really unfair to the whole team to kick off one of the best members right before state. Avery even tried to apologize multiple times, but Mr. Brackman wouldn't have it. It's understandable that he was upset, but that was way too harsh on everyone.
How did the other team members react to Avery being kicked off?
Well, with the importance of state, most of the team really tried to help out the best they could. I mean, nobody wanted to get disqualified.
Was everyone equally supportive?
Not really. Like, Avery even contacted Alex, and I mean, from what I saw during practices, they didn't get along the best. Other members on the team at least had suggestions, but Alex didn't seem to have any real interest in helping. With Avery gone, they would finally have the chance to be the star of the better team.
Let's talk more about what Avery did in response. Were there any examples of Avery trying to apologize? Do you remember?
Yes. On March 5th, Avery showed up to practice as a last effort, but Mr. Brackman got mad again, and Avery was forced to leave right away.
What happened afterward?
Well, Avery and I stopped by the Fry Shack to eat, and soon, when their practice was done, the rest of the mock trial team came in.
Let's zero in on that night at the Fry Shack. Was there anything that stood out to you?
Well, Alex came over to our table and talked to Avery for a bit. Something Alex brought up made Avery upset, and Avery went to the bathroom. I noticed that he left his phone on the table. This was really weird. Avery never leaves his phone around. He must have been really distracted and hurt.
What did Alex do during Avery's absence?
Well, Alex stayed at our table for a bit, talking about Mr. Brackman's decision until Avery got back. Alex seemed almost sincere in our conversation, but they had a way of being totally insincere in this like really passive aggressive way, so.
And what about Avery's cell phone?
I wasn't sure if Avery grabbed the phone again or not. I only remembered it the next day after I tried contacting Avery about a ride to school, and he didn't answer.
What did Avery and you do about this?
Well, we ended up skipping school for the day to retrace our steps to try to find Avery's phone. Neither of us had anything important in school that day, so we figured it couldn't hurt. At the time, we thought that finding the phone was really important.
What else did you try?
Well, after trying to call and text Avery's phone multiple times, we drove around for a while looking for it. We revisited everywhere we went the day before, nowhere near Coach Brackman's house. We didn't find anything, but then I remembered it being on the table at the Fry Shack that we sat at the night before. We went there, but still nothing.
And lastly, what do you think of Avery Becker?
I think Avery is a great person, and he's my best friend. I would never put friendships over the law, but Avery would never put me in that position, so it doesn't matter. Avery is smart, passionate, and genuinely cares about mock trial and about its future. He cares about people and would never do anything to actually hurt anyone.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there any cross?
Yes, Your Honor.
You can go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Perkins. I'd just like to ask you a few questions. First, you and the defendant were best friends.
Yeah, I mean, like I said multiple times, Avery's my best friend.
And you wouldn't have done mock trial had the defendant not done it.
No, Avery introduced me to it, and it was fun because we got to hang out. I wasn't that interested in the thing itself.
Like you just said, you weren't that interested, but you stayed because of Avery Becker.
Yep.
Now, your mock trial team was coached by Mackenzie Brackman.
Yes, he was the coach.
And Mr. Brackman often criticized Mr. Becker's practice style.
Yeah, Brackman continuously got on Avery's case for not practicing enough and not being super duper prepared, but it worked for Avery, so I don't really see the reason that he did that.
Like you said that Avery Becker was often unprepared during mock trial.
Yeah. He didn't need to be. He just had this natural on-the-fly talent that he could just pull out of his pocket. It's amazing, honestly.
I didn't ask how you felt about it. I just asked if Avery Becker was often unprepared.
Yeah, but he didn't need to be, so.
And even unprepared, the defendant would perform flawlessly.
Yeah, I did just say that.
Now, tensions between the defendant and Mr. Brackman were fairly high.
Yeah, I'll admit it doesn't look good for Avery, but that's just past stuff. It doesn't mean anything about what he would actually do.
Tensions were so high that Avery Becker vandalized Mr. Brackman's car out of frustration.
Yeah, but again, I don't really see how that would relate to actually hurting a person. So I don't think that really matters in this case.
Miss Perkins, I'm not asking how you feel about the past influencing the present. I'm just simply clarifying past actions that did happen.
Well, yes, those actions did happen.
Avery Becker vandalized Mr. Bracken's car.
Yeah, objection, improper character evidence.
Is there any response?
Yes, Your Honor. I was just clarifying for the sake of the jury a fact in today's case. I'm not asserting it for the fact of the defendant's current mindset at the time, just for the fact that it did happen.
Mr. Bogut, do you have any further argument you'd like to make?
The defense views that a prior incident of the defendant is irrelevant, and therefore a witness's perception of it is also relevant. That's not what we're discussing today.
I think it's acceptable under these circumstances. So the objection's overruled. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Moving on, Ms. Perkins. After the defendant was demoted to the B team, you dropped out to support your friend.
I did, but it wasn't just to support my friend. I mean, I had no interest in being on the team if I wasn't going to have fun with it, and without Avery, I wasn't going to have fun.
So you would say that because Avery wasn't there, you wouldn't have fun at mock trial?
That is exactly what I just said, yes.
And because Avery wasn't there, you felt no need to be there, so you dropped out.
Objection answered.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that objection?
Yes, objection asked and answered. The witness has repeatedly answered this question.
Okay. It's overruled, but why don't we move on?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, you and the defendant were not at school on March 6th.
No, we were looking for Avery's phone.
And on March 5th at the Fry Shack, you saw the defendant's phone on the table.
Yes, I know for a fact that it was there at the Fry Shack that night.
But what you don't know for a fact is if Avery had it when you two left that night.
Unfortunately, I was not paying attention.
And the next day, you skipped school to look for the missing phone.
Yeah, that is what we did.
And the missing phone was an iPhone brand phone.
Yes.
Now, on March 6th, when you were looking for the phone, did you attempt to track? You attempted to track it through calling and texting?
Yes. We tried to find it, but you know how you're trying to echolocate a phone when you lose it in your bed? Yeah, that's pretty much what we did, but with the neighborhood. It wasn't very effective, but we tried.
Would you agree that if the phone was stolen, dead, or muted, that calling and texting would not have helped?
Yeah, that's pretty obvious.
Now, at no time on that day did it occur to you to track the phone using Find My iPhone programming.
Honestly, I have an Android, and that doesn't occur to you. Like Apple thing, but I mean, it just doesn't occur to you.
Ms. Catt, your answer broke up on that response. Could you repeat it again? I'm sorry. Or I'm sorry, Ms. Perkins, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it didn't occur to me. I have an Android, we're just so completely different that you don't think about it.
But Ms. Perkins, you're aware that even with an Android phone, you can still use the Find My iPhone program and website to track that missing iPhone.
No, I wasn't aware. Like I said, I have an Android. I don't know how Apple stuff works.
And Ms. Catt, let me get you to turn your video off if you can do that, because you're breaking up pretty frequently now. See if this helps.
Is this any better?
Much better, at least for the time. We can hear you okay now. Thanks.
So sorry.
I'm going to repeat the question, Ms. Perkins. You are aware that even with an Android phone, you can still track a missing iPhone using the Find My iPhone program online?
I mean, I'm sure I've heard of it in passing before, but honestly, Android is so different that no, I wasn't thinking about that at all.
You weren't thinking about it at the time, but you are aware now that you can still do that.
Yeah, now, months later, it's not very helpful now.
So, Ms. Perkins, just to clarify, at no time on March 6th did you track the phone?
Not using the Apple iCloud thing. No.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, a brief one.
Go ahead.
Ms. Perkins, what was your state of mind when you were looking for Avery's cell phone?
I mean, it's important to Avery, so I really wanted to find it.
Ms. Cat, I'm going to need you to repeat that again. I'm sorry. You're breaking up pretty frequently right now.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
You know what? There might not be anything that we can do about it at this point. The best way to proceed here, why don't we move on to the next witness, depending on the time left at the, and pause the clocks right now if you haven't. Depending on the time left at the end of the next witness, maybe we can come back to Miss Cat to see if her connection's improved by that point. I think it's a bandwidth problem right now. I'm sorry to cut you short, but let's move on to the next defense witness and then see what happens if we can come back.
May I call up the next witness?
Yes, and let's make sure we've got both a prosecution attorney and the witness. So do we have a prosecution attorney?
Yes, Your Honor.
Great. And do we have the witness?
The next witness will be Avery Becker. So the Avery Becker, if you could please turn on your camera and mic.
Yes, hello.
All right, I think we might have a connection problem here as well. So
I can hear you all. Can you hear me?
Cody, try turning off your camera real quick and see, because your audio is very.
Can you hear me now?
much better.
Is it okay
Alright.
to have the camera off for the trial? Okay.
Yeah, that'll be okay. We'll work through it. So
Okay, thank you so much.
let's proceed forward.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Becker. Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Avery Becker, B-E-C-K-E-R.
All right, thank you, Mr. Becker. Let's start off about talking about you. Could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I go to Colorado High School and I'm on the mock trial team. At least I was. I loved mock trial because I was just sort of a natural at it and I really just loved it.
And how many years have you been on the team for?
All 4 years of high school.
And did you like it a lot?
Yeah, I loved it. I was good at it too.
And how were you good?
Well, it just comes naturally to me. I was always assigned the expert witness cases, and I always won awards because of them. I'm good on the fly, you know?
All right, let's continue for what we're here for. What was your relationship like with Mr. Brackman before he passed away?
Well, we had a rocky relationship. We didn't agree on a lot of things, and sometimes we fought, but I really admired him.
And how was your relationship like with him during mock trial itself?
He said that I was lazy and didn't really put in the work, but our work styles were just different. I work better on the fly, under pressure. It comes more naturally to me. Despite our disagreements, he always gave us the expert witness statements because he knew I would win us big. We would argue about the dumbest stuff.
All right, so I'd like to shift gears and talk about some of the other people on the mock trial team and your relationships with them. So, do you know who Alex DeFuentes is?
Yeah, we're classmates and we're on mock trial together.
And would you consider yourself friends?
Honestly, not really.
And what was your relationship like with Alex?
Well, we just never really talked.
And all right, do you know Taylor Perkins?
Yeah, she's my best friend.
And when you got demoted, Taylor quit, so you were on the A team again?
Well, yeah, but she wanted to do it. She offered. She only did mock trial because of me, and she knew I wanted to be on A team my senior year. She said it herself. She wasn't crazy about mock trial.
Yeah. I'd like to talk to you a bit about what happened with you, Mr. Brackman, around the regional tournament. So tell me about the events that occurred at the regional tournament.
The judges were practically in love with my closing statement, and I won Best Attorney and also Best Closer because of it.
And what happened with Mr. Brackman after you got back from regionals?
He bashed on me in front of everyone and told me that I didn't deserve to win. He just made me feel really sad because it feels like he couldn't say a single nice thing about me. And it hurt. Someone that I admired saying that I didn't deserve what I had won?
Yeah. All right, Mr. Becker. So can you explain what happened after you left the meeting?
I really messed up. I stormed out and I wrote in, well, I thought it was a dry erase marker, but it was permanent. I wrote Worst Attorney's Award on Mr. Brackman's car.
And how did Mr. Brackman react?
He lost it and kicked me off the team, which is understandable. I probably would have done the same thing.
How did you feel about this once you realized it was permanent marker?
I realized immediately what I did wrong, and I tried to apologize over and over, but he just wouldn't take it. I never got the chance to apologize in person because, well, you know, he was killed.
It's okay. Take your time. I know this is it's a tragic story.
Thank you.
And going on to that, if you don't mind me asking, how did it make you feel that you weren't able to apologize to him?
Terrible.
Objection relevant.
Is there any response?
I feel like Mr. Becker's relationship to Mr. Brackman is pretty much the whole reason why we're here, and I'm trying to lay foundation that they cared and that they tried to make an effort to apologize, but they were never able to before he was murdered.
Mr. Falconetti, is there any further argument you'd like to make?
I stand by my objection, Your Honor.
I think it's relevant. The objection's overruled. You can proceed.
All right. Do you want me to re-ask a question?
Yes, please.
All right. And then so if you don't mind me asking, how did that make you feel when you weren't able to apologize to him before he passed?
Really bad. I mean, I regretted my actions as soon as I realized that it was a permanent marker, and not being able to apologize for that, never, that was the last time I saw him. And I couldn't imagine this happening.
It's
I'm
okay.
sorry, this is still really fresh for me.
You're okay. All right, so let's move on to what happened during the time surrounding the death of Mr. Brackman. Where were you the day before the devastating murder?
Taylor and I went to the Fry Shack where we saw a ton of other students, including Alex. We walked around the mall and then we went home.
And where were you on the day that Mr. Brackman was murdered?
I remember every second of it. I woke up and I realized I had no clue where my phone was. I remembered the day before and tried to think of everywhere my phone could be, but couldn't remember where I left it. So Taylor and I decided to ditch school just to look everywhere for my phone. We never ended up finding it, though.
All right, Avery, and this is your last question. Did you murder Mr. Brackman?
Of course not. We didn't always get along, but I really admired him, and I feel like deep down he respected me too. I can't even believe this is real. I keep thinking I'm gonna wake up and this is all just a bad dream.
All right, that's all, Your Honor.
Mr. Falconetti, do you have any cross?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Becker. Now let's start by talking about where you were on March 6, 2020. You weren't at school that day, were you?
No, I wasn't. Like I said, me and Taylor had ditched school to try to find my phone.
Right, you testified that you were with Taylor Perkins.
Yeah,
You're close friends with Taylor, right?
of course. She's my best friend.
Right, best friends even. So there's no one else here today that can testify as to your whereabouts at the time of Mackenzie Brackman's death, is there?
No, but tons of people saw us around the mall and at Fry Shack.
But at the time of Mackenzie Brackman's death, only Taylor knows where you were, right?
That's true, yeah.
Thank you. Now let's talk about your relationship with Coach Brackman. You were in mock trial your senior year of high school, correct?
I've been in mock trial all 4 years. I love it.
You would say you were one of the best on the team, right?
Well, I don't mean to brag, but yeah, I was pretty good.
And you relied on improvisation a lot, didn't you?
I do. It comes naturally to me. I work good under pressure.
But you thought Coach Brackman didn't agree with the style of mock trial, right?
No, we just work differently. He prefers to be prepared and have a plan, and I need that pressure, that sort of danger of working on the fly to do my best work, you know?
Right, but Coach Brackman called you lazy, didn't he?
Yeah,
You
that
thought he
hurt.
never gave you credit for anything.
It felt like that sometimes, yeah.
He told you to stick to his scripts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Coach Brackman always criticized your work, didn't he?
He did outwardly, but I feel like he respected it deep down. I mean, he always gave me the best roles.
So that's a yes, he was very critical. Right.
Yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you. Now, let's talk about what happened before regionals. Coach Brackman criticized your lack of preparation, didn't he?
Yeah. Austin answered. We already established that earlier in the conversation. You just mentioned it.
Any response?
Your Honor, I'm talking specifically about how Coach Brackman criticized Mr. Becker's lack of preparation in respect to regionals, not in general.
I think it's acceptable. The objection's overruled. Go ahead.
I'll ask the question again, Mr. Becker. Coach Brackman criticized your lack of preparation for regionals, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
He took away your closing argument, right?
Yeah.
He even demoted you to the B team, right?
Yeah, but we all act out in anger sometimes. What I did with his car shows that. But just like I regretted what I did to his car, I felt like he regretted putting me
Mr.
down.
Becker, you're getting a little bit ahead of me.
Sorry.
But you thought the B team was full of losers, right? Didn't you?
I don't think I've ever said that specifically, but there's a reason they're called the B team.
Mr. Becker, I believe that you specifically stated that in your witness statement.
Oh, whoops.
Let's move on then. You tried everything to convince Coach Brackman to put you back on the A team, didn't you?
Of course I did. I loved mock trial.
But Mr. Brackman refused, right?
Yeah.
Now, eventually Brackman did put you back on the A team because no one else could fill your role, right?
Yep. Even Brackman knew I was the best. We might disagree sometimes, but you can't argue with everything I've won.
But despite that, Brackman was still extremely critical of you, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Brackman told you in front of the entire team that you didn't deserve the Best Attorney Award, didn't he?
Objection, asked and answered. I feel like the line of questions he's asking, I already asked in my direct.
Any response?
Your Honor, I believe I have the right to re-ask those questions again in cross.
It's acceptable. There's no need to dwell on it, but you can go over some things again. So go ahead.
Mr. Becker, Brackman told you in front of the entire team that you didn't deserve the Best Attorney Award, right?
Yeah.
And this made you angry, didn't it?
Not angry as much as just upset. I was sad. I mean, I really admired him, and hearing someone that you admire tell you that you don't deserve something, that hurts.
So it put you in a negative state of mind, right?
Yeah,
You didn't want to keep being insulted, right?
of course not. Especially by someone that I admired so much.
Now, at that point, you stormed out of the room, right?
Yeah, not my best moment.
When you left the room, you had a permanent marker in your hand, didn't you?
I didn't realize it was a permanent marker when I grabbed it. I didn't realize until after I had already wrote on his car. And
But it was a permanent marker, right?
yes.
Now, when you left the building, you wrote with the permanent marker, Worst Attorney Award on the hood of Brackman's white Porsche, right?
Yeah.
Once Brackman saw that, he kicked you off the team right there, right?
Yeah.
And that made you angrier than ever.
Yeah, but looking back, I would have done the same thing too. I mean, I'm kind of a little brat.
So that's a yes. It did make you angry, right?
Yeah.
You thought Coach Brackman would never let you on the team again.
I thought that we could work our problems out. I just had to talk to him, but every time I tried to apologize, he just wouldn't talk to me.
Exactly. Because of that, you thought Mr. Brackman would never let you on the team again, right?
Objection, hearsay.
Any response?
Your Honor, I'm not offering this for the truth of the matter, but rather to show the effect on Mr. Becker as it goes to Becker's motive to commit the crime charged.
All right, the objection's overruled. You can go ahead.
I'll ask the question again, Mr. Becker. You thought Coach Brackman would never let you on the team again, right?
No, I was actually really hopeful that if I just apologized to him and showed him how sorry I was and how much I regretted doing that, I thought we could get over our differences and he would let me back on the team. I mean, he knows how much mock trial means.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. You're getting a little bit ahead of me, though. So you went home after that, right?
Yeah.
You told your mom that Mr. Brackman got on you again for no good reason, right?
Yeah, I definitely left some details out, but no one wants to admit when they're wrong, especially to their parents.
You did tell her that you walked out of practice, though, correct?
Yeah.
You did not tell her what you had done to Brackman's car, though, right?
Nope.
Objection, relevance. I don't know what the mother and Avery's conversation has to do anything with the death of Mr. the coach.
Any response, Mr. Falconetti?
Your Honor, I'm simply laying foundation to establish Mr. Becker's motive.
I think that's acceptable. You can proceed. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Becker, you didn't tell her what you had done to Mr. Brackman's car, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
But you did tell her that you would get back at Brackman if it was the last thing you did, correct?
Honestly, I can't remember if I said that or not. That seems like a lot. I
Objection, that question was hearsay.
Any response?
Your Honor, that question pertained to this witness's personal statement. I don't see how that's hearsay.
I think it's acceptable. You can go ahead. Overruled.
Mr. Becker, in your witness statement, you say you told your mother you would get back at Brackman if it was the last thing you did, right?
Yeah, but I didn't actually mean that.
That's what you said, isn't it?
But everyone says things that they don't mean when they're upset and hurting.
But that is what you said, right, Mr. Becker?
That's correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there any redirect?
Can I have the time by chance? Or the time left, or? One minute. I'm just gonna ask a few questions.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Did you regret doing the Sharpie on Mr. Brackman's car?
Of course I did.
And would you take it back if you could?
Of course, in an instant. I thought it was dry erase, and the moment I realized it was permanent, I knew I'd really messed up.
All right, that's all, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Let me confirm everyone's names. We've got Julia Spahalski as attorney for the defense, Cody Burnett as witness, and Henry Falconetti as attorney for the prosecution, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, thank you all. The defense has a little bit of time left, and you had started your direct on Miss Cat, but her signal broke up. Mr. Bogut, would you like to see if it's improved to finish that?
Yes, Your Honor. We had some brief redirect. Well, I'll let you have to get across.
Okay. All right. Ms. Cat, let's see if your connection has improved. Will you just say something to see?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Cool. Thank you.
So, Ms. Perkins, what was your state of mind when you and Avery spent the entire day searching for her missing phone?
I mean, I just really wanted to help my best friend find something that they lost. It was important to them, and I wanted to help out.
Would you have thought to do something that you don't have to deal with in your daily life?
I mean, no. I mean, the Apple iCloud thing, that I have never used it, so why would I think to use it for something else?
And thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you all. Let me just confirm the names of everybody for defense witness number 2. Have Braden Bogut as attorney for the defense, Alicia Catt as witness, and Audra Snyder as the attorney for the prosecution. Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you all. I believe that concludes the defense case. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense rests.
All right. Are the parties prepared to give closing arguments?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. The prosecution can start. Go ahead.
If I can just have a moment to set up, Your Honor.
That'll be fine.
Can you see and hear me all right?
Yes.
The right place at the right time. Avery Becker was in the right place at the right time. Today, prosecution has met the burden of proof. We have showed you that Avery Becker was at the scene of the murder at the time of the crime. Mackenzie Brackman was very set in his ways, a hardened and perhaps somewhat jaded veteran of the public trial. In accordance with this, he applied his philosophy of preparedness and sticking to the script to his mock trial team at Colorado High School. It served him well enough until he crossed paths with Avery Becker. You heard from Alex Cifuentes and Taylor Perkins today that Avery Becker was essentially an anti-Brackman to the mock trial team. He showed up late. He didn't prepare. He left his team in a constant state of anxiety. Avery felt that Brackman's methods were restrictive and overbearing. Brackman felt that Avery's methods were chaotic and risky. As you can imagine, this was a constant source of friction between the two. Shouting matches in front of the entire team, threats, angry glares, frustration, all building up more and more until something snapped. During what should have been a normal practice, Mr. Brackman told Avery that he didn't deserve the Best Attorney Award. Avery, in a rage, stormed out of the room. A few minutes later, Brackman left the building to find the hood of his white Porsche proclaiming Worst Attorney Award. He was standing there, but Avery Becker, fingers curled around the permanent marker. Coach Brackman kicked Avery off the team. This left Avery devastated and with nothing to do but stew. I'd like to talk about the day of Mackenzie Brackman's death, March 6, 2020. This is the point where the defense has tried to call the story into question. Detective Jordan Markowitz's investigation concluded that the evidence clearly shows Avery Becker was at the scene of the crime. You saw Avery's text to Alex Cifuentes claiming he's gonna be really upset when he sees what I do to his house. That's not damning enough. The cell tower records clearly show that Becker traveled from their house to Brackman's that day. Members of the jury, what else is there possibly to conclude? That Becker was just in the area? Now, Professor Blake Van Owen may contend that none of this proves anything. Despite the mountain of evidence produced by Detective Markowitz, they're still grasping at straws, stretching the truth to any degree to try to stick it to the man. Members of the jury, Blake Van Owen is not Batman. Will you trust the police with their advanced tools, qualified experts, and surplus of resources? Or will you trust a disgruntled professor who will do anything to prove any police investigation wrong, even with the thinnest of evidence, even with the shakiest theories, even if it means that justice is not served? Let me remind you again that prosecution has proved that Avery Becker was in the right place at the right time. The evidence is clearly against the idea that some vaguely suspicious student discovered through yearbooks and Google has anything to do with this case. The evidence is clearly in favor of the idea that Avery Becker was at the victim's house at the time of the victim's death. Members of the jury, after that, the logic is simple. Prosecution has met its burden. Find Avery Becker guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Falconetti. Is the defense prepared to give a closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Kern, I might have to have you shut your video off again. I'm sorry, but you're coming across pretty scratchy.
All right, is that better?
Much better.
All right, perfect. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today you bore witness to a desecration of American justice and an insult to the word evidence. An investigation so rushed, with investigators so reactionary, as to ultimately fabricate a case so reprehensible that it should be hailed as an amazing failure of the Denver Police Department for years to come. I feel that it is important for us to re-examine the evidence brought against my client, and thus I ask you to remember your sworn duties as jury members. You, if you are to find Avery Becker guilty of both burglary and felony murder, must agree beyond a reasonable doubt my client was at the scene of the Brackman residence on March 6th and was capable of killing Brackman. This means that the evidence must show my client is a killer without equivocation. Ladies and gentlemen, you have seen the evidence. You have seen Detective Markowitz pass off basic data and its amateur analysis as sophisticated tracking techniques, when, in reality, this data can do one thing and one thing only: determine the general location of a cell phone. It cannot place Avery Becker at the scene of a crime. You've seen Kyle Kuzak's report, which serves as the poster child for Kuzak's reactionary investigation technique, whereby he simply draws the same conclusion as Detective Markowitz. Kuzak pointed out that if you don't document everything, the case will be missing important evidence. This from the same investigator who lost several important photos of the crime scene and said it was perfectly fine. These incongruities are only possible when an investigation is run with an extreme lack of respect for the victim, suspects, and the evidence. Both these investigators took the obvious conclusion, handed to them freshly unvetted by unreliable witnesses like Alex Cifuentes, and placed it in the lap of you, the jury. And I would like to remind you that the text messages, which were the catch for the entire investigation of my client, are completely unverifiable, as Detective Markowitz himself testified. This is the evidence you have seen against Avery Becker. The records show a broad area in which a cell phone existed and completely unverifiable hearsay from a student who has a direct conflict of interest with the defendant. That is the entire breadth to which the prosecution's case occupies. Now I'd also like to return to the witnesses called by the defense. You heard first from Professor Blake Van Owen, a man with years of investigative background and his own course at the University of Colorado, Denver. He presented you with clear evidence that Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak's investigation was rushed, and a myriad of alternate avenues that the prosecution failed to address in their investigation. You heard from Taylor Perkins, the only witness claiming to have seen Becker that night, who also provided the alibi for Becker. Finally, you heard from Becker himself. Becker, who was the victim of lazy police work and is now being threatened with a murder charge, prison time, and all the consequences that come with it. The prosecution has presented you cell tower records that cover a massive radius with no specific data, text messages whose origin is unverifiable, and scuff marks. No DNA, no fingerprints, no eyewitnesses, no stolen goods, no evidence. The prosecution said that Avery Becker was in the right place at the right time. Avery Becker was not. Avery Becker was at the mall with his friend, skipping school and enjoying being a high schooler. Now he's on trial for murder. On trial and facing prison because of the rushed, reactionary, and reprehensible investigation of Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak. Avery is clearly a bright child with an amazing future ahead of him. You, the jury, have the power to ruin that future or save it. Again, all I ask is you to consider the prosecution has presented enough evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker is a killer. If not, then you must find my client Avery Becker not guilty. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kern. We have now reached the conclusion of this competition and the first day of the competition. So congratulations to you all.
Your Honor, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I believe that we reserved any extra time for rebuttal at the end of this case.
You know, I don't recall you asking, but I believe you've got about 30 seconds or so left. If you want to use it, go ahead.
I believe it was in the preliminary matters, Your Honor.
Okay, if you want to use it, feel free. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the jury, if you want to talk about an insult to evidence, let's talk about Professor Blake Van Owen's case. Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak agree because their evidence is credible. Their evidence is enough to prove that Avery Becker was in the right place at the right time. Their conclusion was not just the obvious one, it was the correct one. Members of the jury, you have the power to ensure that justice is served. Find Avery Becker guilty. Thank you.
All right, now we have reached the conclusion of the case. Do the scoring panel